The following program is being brought to you on the Voice America Health and Wellness Channel. For more information about our network and to check our additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericahealth.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Loss in our lives takes on many different forms and can be more than just a physical loss. It goes beyond that to include emotional loss, business loss, and loss of personal health. This is Voices for Healing with Cathy Roberts. Today, Cathy and her guests will help you find out that you are not alone in dealing with loss and grief. There are so many different ways to deal with loss. What works for some may not work for others. Together, let's find the solution that you can use. Here's your host, Cathy Roberts.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to Voices for Healing Talk Radio. I'm your host, Cathy Roberts. For those of you listening in for the first time, I'm a professional counselor and educator in the Maryland suburbs of Washington, D.C. Internet radio is a terrific forum as we get to connect here and continue our connection through emails and social media. You can learn more about me and my work at my website, CathyRoberts.net. And from there, we can connect on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+, and iTunes. Each week, the show features a guest who has expertise in some area of healing loss. We encounter so many challenges and losses, large and small, and healing comes in many forms. My wish is for each of you to connect with one or more practices or techniques that you can add to your healing toolkit. Today, my guest is Dr. Eva Selhub, and our topic is nature's powerful ability to heal. Hello, Eva. I'm really grateful you're here on the show.
Me.
Very good. Let me introduce you to our audience, and then we will dive in. Dr. Eva Selhub is an instructor of medicine at Harvard Medical School and a clinical associate of the Benson Henry Institute for Mind-Body Medicine at the Massachusetts General Hospital. Board certified in internal medicine and trained in Eastern medical practices, she has a private practice in Boston where she provides integrative medicine and resiliency coaching to her clients. She's also a motivational speaker, teacher, and trainer who has lectured throughout the United States, Europe, China, and Israel. In her practice and presentations, she adopts an integrated approach to health and well-being. Using her intuitive counseling abilities and scientific knowledge, she guides clients to discover happiness, well-being, and ultimately how to stay resilient through life's obstacles. Dr. Eva is the author of The Love Response and co-author of Your Brain on Nature. In the hour ahead, we will look a little at the history of nature and healing, hear about the research that supports what we intuitively know and feel about being in nature, and learn some practices and simple things we all can do to increase nature's healing influence in our lives. Eva, let's start with you telling us a little more about you and what got you passionate enough about nature's healing power to write a book about it.
Well, I think, probably for most of our listeners and most likely yourself, we usually get turned to other healing modalities when we need the healing ourselves. And, my journey into the world outside of sort of allopathic medicine, which is sort of the modern Western type of medicine, started in my residency. Always interested in the indigenous cultures, and I was an anthropology major in university, but I was always interested in other forms of healing. But in my own journey of studying medicine, I had my own crisis. I was stuck with an HIV needle in my residency, and everything turned out okay. After a while of having to take medications and worrying and all that sort of kind of suffering. But during that time, I did a lot of soul searching and wondering, what am I doing? What's right with my life? And I started going on that path of looking for other ways of dealing with my own anxiety, other ways of dealing with my stress, other ways of healing that were possible in the world other than, the modern medicine that I was studying. And so when I first finished my residency, I started working with the Benson Henry Institute in Mind Body Medicine and learning about stress and stress management and meditation and cognitive restructuring, exercise, and all those forms of coping that allow us to be more resilient in life. And during that learning, I was also learning about the brain and learning about the stress response and becoming, more or less an expert in stress and stress physiology and the application of these modalities and reversing that stress response so that we could heal and get better. And in that, I discovered that when I was in nature or I used meditations involving nature, my patients or I felt better, that there was something there. And I was incorporating more and more of that, and also finding that when I spent time in nature, the anxiety or depression that I would experience or my patients would experience would actually not be present. So again, asking what's going on here. And part of it was, logical and intuitive, understanding that in Eastern practices, the body's a landscape of nature. So of course, this was making sense from a Taoist and Eastern perspective, but really wanted to see, what's going on here from a scientific perspective, which is when I was approached by my co-author, Alan Logan, because, we both lecture at Harvard, and he said, I'm really interested in this subject, and I see you're already doing it clinically, let's write about it. So that's really how this book came about, was really this brilliant man. Alan Logan is a naturopath who, is really good at researching, and I'm really good at diagnosing and using, my clinical skills, and we came together and found this book that really merges what we've known intuitively, for thousands of years of what science is proving to us.
Wonderful story. I always love to hear how people land on the path that they land on. And your story is so much like so many others in that some personal experience or even crisis in our own lives sets us up on the path that is the one that becomes passionate for us. And I so want our listeners to know that, because it's often, not always, but often through those losses that we really have an opportunity that we wouldn't have otherwise. So
absolutely, and I think nature is important for us in that way, because one of my favorite lines is to say that nature just as soon lets a forest fire burn as a flower bloom. It's always an opportunity for growth for nature, and so loss is part of nature's way. And there's no better way to understand that than to be in nature, and it is a way for our healing and for our understanding and for our growth. So most people do find that it's a place of solace to learn about nature through those losses.
Truly is. Now, you touched on it. You mentioned the Taoists, and healers throughout history have prescribed being outdoors, walks in nature, healing waters, and such for cures for sleep and mental and physical health concerns. Can you speak to some of the historical writings through the ages about nature as a prescription for ailments?
Well, let's even go before nature as a prescription for ailments. Let's just start with the fact that we evolved in nature. So the idea that, we have now to be in a modality where somebody says you need to exercise or you need to go out in nature is actually a little bit funny, considering that we evolved in the element of nature. We are nature. And so the ancients, as I like to call them, or in wisdom traditions, didn't really separate us from nature. They didn't have MRIs or CAT scans or blood draws. They actually, saw the human body as a landscape of nature. Your body, as 5 elements, for instance, in the 5-element system in traditional Chinese medicine, your water, your earth, your metal, your wood, and your fire. And so that's really how those wisdom traditions and our ancestors saw our body, as a landscape of nature. We watched, the deer and what they used to lick their wounds and heal their wounds, and then we figured out we could use that same herb for ourselves. So we were intricately connected with nature, and it wasn't until we started, becoming more into agriculture and living separately and building homes, and then, of course, creating these concrete jungles, that we started needing prescriptions to be in nature. And those have been that's been going on for, centuries, where literally prescriptions were written for people to go to sanatoriums where it was just all nature and walks in nature, where people could, overcome anxiety or, rest, go away to rest for a while to take care of their illness. And even now we have amazing research that's coming forward, especially in Japan, looking at spending time in nature and how that's not only helping mental health, but also our immune system. So this is really ingrained in us.
Yes. And in our modern times, we sometimes lose what you just said, which I thought was so beautiful, that we are nature beings. We are a part of it. And on some level, we know that all the time. And yet when we can get in our kind of mechanistic mode of working our 40-hour weeks and doing what we're doing, we can get a sense of separation and loss from that. How would you say our relationship with nature has changed in the last 100 years or so?
Well, I think that's a really good question, because I don't even think people have noticed how that separation has gotten larger in many ways, and in some ways probably, and for some folks, closer. So, I mean, you can think about technology, which is wonderful, but, I didn't have a cell phone or mobile phone in 1993.
Mm-hmm.
Or 92. That's created a huge difference for us. That the internet, the computers, people are having more screen time. And the more screen time you have, that means the more you're looking down, the more you're only focusing on some small part of your world. You're becoming more and more separate, even though that internet might be connecting you to someone who's far, far away. It's not actually connecting you to your immediate surroundings and to the benefits of nature, because most of the time people are indoors looking at screens. So that in itself has changed our world just in the past 10 years, 5 years, 3 years. Social media, as wonderful as it is, has actually, in a way, creating more narcissism and lack of empathy, which we actually don't have when we spend more time in nature, more depression, more anxiety, which we don't have when we spend out in nature. So technology itself, people moving away from the rural areas to make money in the urban areas, having less green space, has all really drastically affected us over the past 100 years, where they actually have a syndrome labeled now called nature deprivation syndrome.
I haven't heard about that, but I sure can see how it is a syndrome, and how I think particularly for children who lack exposure to nature growing up. I remember in my own childhood how great it was to see the sparkle of sunlight on water and be playing in a creek and find mica, which I thought was gold, and ran home to show my parents, and just all of the kinds of things that happen when we are out in nature and our connection to the natural world. So,
well, I think what's important in what you said was you were running around. So we have a terrible epidemic of obesity in this country, and a lot of that is because kids are not running around. They're not running around in nature, whether they're overscheduled or they've got screen time or they're being given fast food that's unhealthy. They are not connected with nature. They don't know their own. They know that there's an endangered species across the world, but they don't even know what type of species are in their backyard. They're not connected to the earth and, the creativity that can come from being in the earth, and the openness and the collaborations that can happen and the enjoyment, but the physical activity that happens from being outdoors. And that is a problem for our children.
I think, too, of what happens when we're barefoot on the grass or running with our arms extended to the sun. There's such a connection with above and below when we're in nature, and here we are right in the middle of it. And I can get sad when I think of some of what is lost by the time spent indoors with a screen in front of us or a keyboard.
Yeah, and the good news is that you can capture that. Even, the studies show that, you are well off, even if you only got 20 minutes, but you do need that 20 minutes. And you can compensate for a lot of that loss by bringing nature indoors. And like I said, a lot of what I do is teach people guided meditations that involve nature. And that also has a wonderful benefit. Imagining that you're barefoot on the earth, imagining that you're throwing your arms out to the sky and feeling the sun shining down upon you, or watching the sparkles of the sunlight dancing on the water. So that imagery, that language will elicit those memories, will elicit those physiological changes changes in your body and are very beneficial.
Beautiful, that comment about the guided imagery being just as powerful, and maybe not just as, but being a powerful source. Eva, we're coming up on our first break already. Listeners, Dr. Eva Selhub and I are discussing the power of nature to heal. Stay with us. This is Cathy Roberts, and we will be right back on Voices for Healing.
Cathy Roberts is not only an exceptional radio host, she's an exceptional listener and counselor. Cathy appeals to motivated, high-functioning people to help them improve their health and vitality. Cathy can meet you where you are and help you identify what you want. Visit Cathy's website at www.cathyroberts.net or call her at 301-651-0019. Cathy works with both individuals and couples and specializes in grief and depression counseling. Get to know yourself by working with Cathy. Visit cathyroberts.net or call 301-651-0019. Cathy Roberts offers Circle of Voices teleclasses to help you focus your mind, engage your energy, and awaken your inner guide. Through this experiential and interactive series, you will know yourself more and learn to express yourself authentically in your personal life. Visit Cathy's website at cathyroberts.net to find out about this teleclass series, designed to open you to change and engage healing in the fabric of your life. Go to cathyroberts.net or call Cathy at 301-651-0019 for more information. You are listening to Voices for Healing with your host, Cathy Roberts. If you have a question or comment for the program, please send an email to Cathy at cathyroberts.net. That's Cathy at cathyroberts.net. Now back to Voices for Healing.
Welcome back to Voices for Healing. Guest Dr. Eva Selhub and I were just talking about the importance of being outdoors in nature, and Dr. Eva was sharing with us how with some of her patients she uses guided imagery, where she brings images from outdoors into the mind of those doing the guided imagery, and they can experience some of the benefits of natural healing in that way as well. Eva, we talked about the exposure to nature making us a little less caring about our planet and ecosystem. Can you comment upon that a little more, the narcissism that develops and the lack of compassion that can come about when we're more focused on the kind of day-to-day world and living in our cities and earning a living rather
Absolutely. Well,
Great.
I think one of the best ways for our listeners to think about it is think about their own lives. I mean, all of us do this. When you get caught up in the stress of your own life, literally what happens is your brain is shutting down from higher thinking and global thinking and larger connections and connections to something larger than self to me, because it's about survival. Right? When you're being chased by a lion, you're not going to figure out how to, have dinner with your friends or plant some trees. You want to think about how to get away from that lion. So it's appropriately, physiologically narcissistic, right? It's about me and saving my life. And so what most individuals don't realize is that there's the stress that you're aware of that's affecting you and your brain, but there's actually more stress that you're not aware of that's it's catapulting and pushing you into that fight or flight mode where your brain is perceiving that you're being chased by a lion 24/7, whether or not it's your deadline or worrying about your bills or your health is having some issues, or, you are having too much screen time, which, again, is unconscious stress, or there are smells in your house that you're not aware of, or noise pollution. Again, the list goes on in ways that we are affected that we're not aware of because we're, psychologically used to being in a concrete jungle, but our, evolution takes a really long time to happen, and we haven't been around as a species to have gotten used to being in a concrete jungle. So your body and your mind actually don't like it. So what happens is that mind-body system is in constant stress. And the more screen time you have and the more indoor time you have, and the more stress you have in your life, the more separate you will become from others. So you're not only separate from other people, but you're separate from your higher senses and your higher self. And you're separate from the connection to something larger than self. You can call that spirituality. But that big one is your environment. It's nature. And you're all about surviving, coping. So you're not really thinking about compassion. You're not really connecting to the beauty around you. You're not really thinking about how the earth is really supporting you, and maybe you should thank it and help it continue to support you. We're only thinking about how to get from A to B. And so that's what creates that lack of empathy and the lack of compassion and the narcissism, but it also creates self-destruction. I mean, I think we all have had experiences where we're so stressed out, we eat, a whole pint of ice cream or, what we call comfort food, which, we know isn't good for us. It's not healthy, but it's making us feel good in that moment. So that's what we do. And so what happens is it keeps accumulating, and the next thing we know, it's more important to get that Big Mac in your body than actually know where that Big Mac is coming from, and what it's doing to your planet and the carbon footprint. And then all these messages that media is giving just makes us feel worse. So we sort of push it away. We don't want to pay attention to it, which actually makes it worse. Making people feel badly about something never works. So instead, it's about saying, go outside, go experience nature. And what happens is people feel better. They fall in love and they say, wow, I didn't even recognize this amazing tree that I've driven by 1,000 times. I wonder where it came from. How long has it been here? And the more we connect to the resources that feed us and that nurture us and love us, the more we move into appreciation, then we start connecting with our environment and wanting to help it. And so that's sort of what's been going on, I think, over the centuries, especially the last 10, 20 years, is the more we become isolated in our stress, the more narcissistic and less empathic we become in general, especially to our environment.
I think of how big the hunger is for that beauty and being in nature. This past weekend was the Cherry Blossom Festival in Washington, D.C., not far from where I live. And throngs of people come out for this, and people just want to be out. And finally, after this winter that's been really pink and the blossoms are so beautiful. And so there really is a really strong hunger for this among people. And I think it's lovely the way you frame it is when you get out and can be in nature, then not only do you feel better, but you're also connecting with something so much bigger than you, and that and reduces the narcissism and increases the compassion and love for yourself, the planet, and others. And I think you frame it in a really lovely way. What are we learning from the research about the influence of water, plants, and animals on our brains? We all know this, we feel it, we know it instinctively and intuitively. What's behind it that indicates this is why it feels so good. This is why I feel better in nature.
Well, what's funny is the way we like to put it is to say, that the studies are confirming that being out in nature is like getting a drop of morphine in your brain. And, literally, when you're out in nature, the reward centers in your brain are stimulated. You've got a release of these really delicious neurotransmitters and morphine-like substances, the neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, which really raise your mood, turn off that stress response, reduce inflammation, and really create this feel-good feeling. When that's, like I mentioned, when that stress response is firing and you're going into fight or flight response, it down-regulates those reward systems. It shuts down your executive functioning and higher abilities to think and appreciate and connect. And so the reverse happens with nature. Like I said, it's literally like a drop of morphine has been dropped into your brain. It's a high, basically.
Nature is pleasure. That's what you're saying. There's pleasure in nature. So it's so enjoyable. Tell us about the effect that being outdoors has on our immune systems as well.
Well, it's just super interesting studies. There's a wonderful group that's doing these studies in Japan called Shinrin-yoku, and it's forest bathing. It's literally walking through a forest and finding that even just 20 minutes of walking through that forest is actually improving the immune system. It's shutting down or lowering those stress hormone levels and improving those, natural killer activities and those immune cells that we really need to fight infection and fight tumors and that sort of thing. So we are finding, research is finding that, not only does nature, or even just looking at photos of nature, improve your brain, and, they've seen this on even MRIs, where there's improvement of emotions and abilities to love and empathy, but also an improvement in that immune functioning.
I just have a momentary distraction here. I'm making sure that we're connected. I'm getting something that indicates that we may or may not be, but I hear you just fine. So we will carry on here. This is part of technology, I guess. So, yeah, you were talking about the Japanese forest bathing and the other ways that just being in nature can really help lower those stress hormones and improve our functioning all around. And I certainly know that we all experience that when we go out. I wonder if you could share some of the research that you and Alan uncovered regarding nature's effects on blood pressure levels and the stress marker cortisol. We've had a lot of people on this program talking about the different ways that you can reduce your stress levels of cortisol so that you can, either through exercise or meditation or other things. So I'm interested in what you found out about nature and these things as well.
Well, what's really interesting is that, it's not, the studies are not only having people sort of go out in nature, but it's actually just watching even videos or looking at photographs of nature and then having to do, stressful tasks or watching some stressful video and then watching another video of, environmental, concrete jungle video versus a video of, a rural setting with trees and vegetation and water. And that there were then done objective measurements, looking at electrocardiograms and skin conduction tests and pulse and blood pressure. And over and over and over again, they confirmed that, individuals who saw the nature scenes, whether they were out in nature, walked through a path of nature, saw pictures of nature versus the concrete jungle, invariably had lower cortisol levels, lower pulse and heart rates, lower muscular tension, lower alpha wave activity in the brain, which is increased when you are, improved alpha wave activity in the brain, which is decreased during the stress response. So it's kind of like when you're in a meditative state and the study's looking at the relaxation response, that's what you would say, these exact parameters.
Reminds me of a study I read, I don't know where, about hospital patients and those who were in rooms where they had a window that looked out on some sort of nature, it could be trees or a grassy area, their conditions improved and they had fewer side effects than those who were in a room that didn't have a window or a window that looked out on a city building or something like that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I think, it really says something about those of us who work in the healing field and how we structure our office settings, our medical settings, so that people have more access to nature. I'm thinking of an integrative medicine center that opened up recently in the area that I live in. And when you're in the waiting room, there's an entire wall of that center that is green plants on the wall.
Mm-hmm. Oh, nice.
And as you're looking out the window from that waiting room, you're seeing, a 6-lane suburban road, but that there's just a whole wall of plants. And I thought it was very lovely when I saw it. And as we're having this conversation, I'm understanding more and more about the intentional planning of it being there.
Absolutely. Good research on it. Having a plan in your office or what have you, they're finding that you actually experience less fatigue. Less mental fatigue, have better cognitive functioning from having that plant there. Or having a room with a view, absolutely better cognitive functioning, fewer hospital stays, less, anger and depression. There's a slew of studies confirming that.
Yeah. I think with some intentional planning, people can really, the planners, the architects for these settings can really do something very good for people as they're waiting. Well, Eva, believe it or not, we're moving very quickly here and we're coming up on our second break. I want to share a quote from Albert Camus, who said, "In the depth of winter, I finally learned that there was in me an invincible summer." I think of the change of seasons we're in right now and the natural world, and part of the message of this program, which is, can you find that glimmer of life and light, even amidst the dark nights of the soul? Can you contact the natural world support for that? Thoughts to carry you through our next break. This is Cathy Roberts on Voices for Healing, and we will be right back.
Cathy Roberts offers Circle of Voices teleclasses to help you focus your mind, engage your energy, and awaken your inner guide. Through this experiential and interactive series, you will know yourself more and learn to express yourself authentically in your personal life. Visit Cathy's website at cathyroberts.net to find out about this teleclass series, designed to open you to change and engage healing in the fabric of your life. Go to cathyroberts.net or call Cathy at 301-651-0019 for more information. Cathy Roberts is not only an exceptional radio host, she's an exceptional listener and counselor. Cathy appeals to motivated, high-functioning people to help them improve their health and vitality. Cathy can meet you where you are and help you identify what you want. Visit Cathy's website at www.cathyroberts.net or call her at 301-651-0019. Cathy works with both individuals and couples and specializes in grief and depression counseling. Get to know yourself by working with Cathy. Visit cathyroberts.net or call 301-651-0019. You are listening to Voices for Healing with your host, Cathy Roberts. If you have a question or comment for the program, please send an email to Cathy at cathyroberts.net. That's Cathy at cathyroberts.net. Now back to Voices for Healing.
We left our listeners with a quote from Camus, and we now pick up our conversation with Dr. Eva Selhub, co-author with Alan Logan of Your Brain on Nature. Eva, a lot of people listening to the show are going through an intense loss and might not have much energy to get out in nature. You've already told us about some of the things that may be helpful for them, but what are some simple ways that people can connect with nature even if their energy is feeling a little low or they are unable to get out?
I think it's a really wonderful question, and, I think we both have clients that we're helping through this. And I mean, I said this in the beginning of the show, but I really, really strongly believe in guided meditations. And there's a lot, I personally have a lot of audio CDs that I've created, and I've done a beautiful one with Stephen Halpern, which he's a sound healer. Mm-hmm. And so the combination of his beautiful music and guiding through, letting go and being a sea creature in the water or becoming a butterfly or whatever that is, I have found has been increasingly healing the more they listen to it, which is why it's increasingly, it sort of builds up in the system and your memories are ignited of those experiences. I find that people heal better. They're able to cope more effectively, and it's 10 minutes or whatever of just sort of disappearing from your life into this other beautiful natural world. So I do find those guided meditations to be very helpful. And the other piece is just bringing some plants into your home. Having pictures around your home of nature. The other thing that people can use, which is really helpful, is aromatherapy. So, the different smells of nature are extremely healing. They, like lavender, for instance, can be a relaxant. You can use, lemon balm. There's a lot of different aromatherapy. I'm not an expert in this, but there's some good research showing the changes that can happen, healing, relaxation, lifting mood, increasing your energy of the different types of smells that can heal and that can help. And those are pretty simple things that you can, bring into your home with really, stepping out only maybe to go buy them, but not necessarily for you to have to go outside, or even if you can sit by the window and especially if you've got, a room with a view that allows you to be able to see some green and look outside, or see if you can open the window, just take some, big deep breaths. All of those things can be extremely helpful in giving you sort of access to nature.
You mentioned aromatherapy, and I'll just let our listeners know who perhaps didn't listen last week that our April 14th show included an essential oils therapist or aromatherapist, and she gave some really great information on using aromatherapy or essential oils to heal grief and depression. So I love that you're bringing it up. It reinforces part of our last show. So and she talked about it as a healing, natural healing and vibrational healing from nature, the vibration of the oils from nature as part of the healing. So it was a wonderful, wonderful show.
Which brings me to the other thing about nature, bringing it indoors, is actually bringing indoors into your body. So one of the things that tends to happen when we're grieving or depressed is we seek comfort food. And that comfort food is usually high in fat and high in sugar and often high in processed chemical additives. And the problem with that even though it might taste good and that might make you feel temporarily better, it actually is creating more inflammation and more havoc on your body because it isn't natural and it is harder to break down, and it actually is causing more depression and more anxiety than when you started. So one way of actually bringing nature into your home is actually bringing it into your body and being really mindful, being really appreciative of what's organically appropriate for your body, what's growing naturally. Being connected to your local farmers helps you feel less disconnected. So being mindful of saying, I am going to love my existence, and by loving my existence, I want to nurture my existence. And nurturing my existence means putting whatever I need to into my body to help me cope. Because if I'm not putting good stuff into my body, I'm not going to cope very well. So that's really bringing in more vegetables, more fruits, more grass-fed proteins, and that sort of thing, and really being more mindful of your nutrition, and because that is nature.
I agree with you, and always think that eating as close to the earth as we can, and by that I mean things that have very few added ingredients, very little processing in them, and then we're eating real food that our bodies can use more effectively and efficiently, and more of what's in them gets to our cells. It just is a really healthy way to be. Yeah. Did you come across any research about nature and healing grief? Anything on that?
There isn't. I think most of it is, there is some. Most of it is really looking at, depression and, when grief really falls under situational depression. But we do know that through the centuries and many modalities, being out in nature improves cognition and improves mental health and improves sort of anxiety and depression. And so we also know, again, from the learning that when people are able to be connected to that larger picture, they're able to see and connect with that life and death cycle, and understand that with every ending, there's a new beginning. And, and they've actually, it's called ecotherapy, right, where they're using nature as a way to help people in therapy. And they actually do that a lot with children. Children that have had loss, and having them learn from the beginning about nature and about the cycles of nature. So it's usually found to be extremely healing.
Yeah, I find the appreciation of it from an early age important. I know that some of that was instilled in me through a grandmother who went outdoors and took walks every single day. Partly that was because she couldn't drive a car. She didn't know how to drive. But the effect was great to be out walking every day during my earliest years, and I continued to do that. And one of the things that I really liked to do during a period of my own grief was to lie on the earth. I had a favorite pine tree that I liked, and I would lie on the earth under that pine tree. Just imagine that my heartbeat was connecting with the heartbeat of Mother Earth. And that was for me such a healing thing to do. And I don't know anything about the science of Mother Earth's heartbeat, but doing that really brought me a lot of peace and sweetness. And well, as you know, nature is just really important to me in my own healing.
Right.
And so I share that with you and our listeners, because that was...
Well, I think if our listeners want to, I mean, if there's been any studies on this particular thing, I'm not sure, but if you want to look at, why that is so effective, and I actually have meditations like that are with that type of imagery purposefully. One is that you're actually, in your relaxation response, you're in the meditative state. When you're paying attention to your heartbeat and your breath and lying on the earth, you are meditating. Mm-hmm. So there's that benefit. Then there's that benefit of really being connected. So one of the, the main obstacles towards healing, like I said, with the stress response, is the automated physiological sense of separation. Right? Because if we're not feeling separated, we're feeling connected to our resources, then we cope very effectively. That stress response will not fire very strongly. If we're feeling disconnected, helpless, and hopeless, that's the fight or flight response. So invariably, being in stress or that fight or flight response means feeling separate, feeling disconnected, feeling alone. By connecting to the earth, by connecting to another heartbeat, you are giving a different message to the brain, to the body. I am deeply connected. I am deeply loved. I am deeply supported. That is a huge part of our physiological, mental, psychological, emotional, and physical development in the first year or two of life is the learning of trust, the learning that our needs were going to be met from a larger world and that we were deeply connected. It's a pre-verbal learning that we get from being in the womb and being dependent on other beings who have to take care of us, which we forget as we get older. We have to do everything ourselves, and we lose people. So it has a lot of benefits.
Yeah, it really, really does. Tell something about being an outdoor light. That seems to be a piece of it, is natural light.
Well, aside from the vitamin D, which I won't go into the research on that because that hopefully everybody's heard about, all over the news and internet, and the need for vitamin D and the lack of sunlight, and how that causes so much vitamin D deficiency, which leads to more fatigue and inflammation and health problems, not to mention osteoporosis. But the other thing that people don't realize is the need for melatonin for your circadian rhythm, for good sleep, and for other functions of your body. When you spend less time outdoors getting natural light, and especially when you spend so much time on the screen, what happens is that light coming from the screen is actually screwing up your melatonin levels and inhibiting them, so that by the time you're supposed to be going to sleep, when your melatonin levels are supposed to be high, they're low. So your sleep is being negatively affected as well. So that natural sunlight, even if you can get a good dose of natural sunlight for 10, 15 minutes, is going to be able to give you the ability to absorb some vitamin D and help your melatonin levels.
Important to know, especially with the amount of insomnia and sleep disorders that are out there right now, so people can get some information about how sunlight can help with sleeping too. It's already time for us to take another short break. Listeners, stay tuned for more with Eva Selhub and Cathy Roberts. This is Voices for Healing Talk Radio.
Cathy Roberts is not only an exceptional radio host, she's an exceptional listener and counselor. Cathy appeals to motivated, high-functioning people to help them improve their health and vitality. Cathy can meet you where you are and help you identify what you want. Visit Cathy's website at www.cathyroberts.net or call her at 301-651-0019. Cathy works with both individuals and couples and specializes in grief and depression counseling. Get to know yourself by working with Cathy. Visit cathyroberts.net or call 301-651-0019. Cathy Roberts offers Circle of Voices teleclasses to help you focus your mind, engage your energy, and awaken your inner guide. Through this experiential and interactive series, you will know yourself more and learn to express yourself authentically in your personal life. Visit Cathy's website at cathyroberts.net to find out about this teleclass series designed to open you to change and engage healing in the fabric of your life. Go to CathyRoberts.net or call Cathy at 301-651-0019 for more information. You are listening to Voices for Healing with your host, Cathy Roberts. If you have a question or comment for the program, please send an email to Cathy at CathyRoberts.net. That's Cathy at CathyRoberts.net. Now back to Voices for Healing.
Welcome back, listeners, to Voices for Healing. I'm Cathy Roberts with Dr. Eva Selhub. Eva, tell our listeners how they can reach you and about any events or projects that you have coming up.
Sure, I love hearing from anyone, so you can feel free. Go to my website, drselhub.com. That's drselhub.com, and you can sort of contact me through the website, and you can find me on Twitter and Facebook as well, and connect with me through that. I've recently put online a wonderful 8-week online program called Choosing Healthy, Choosing Happy, which will use a lot of the guided meditations I've talked about, and it's really my clients who I actually see personally are doing the program, and they actually love it. And I've also offered with anyone who wants some individual work and individual coaching that the minute you sign up for that online coaching, you actually get a discount in working with me. Because I work with people all over the world, coaching them into happiness and health. And that can be done from anywhere. And, of course, like I said, you get an automatic discount by doing the online program. And I found a lot of people to believe that to be quite helpful. And in general, sign up for the newsletter. I'm always letting people know where I'm going to be appearing and doing workshops or conferences and that sort of thing. I think the big one, I'm mostly in Europe, I think, in hospitals over the next few months, but a really wonderful workshop, which I highly recommend. Again, I put it on my website. I'll be doing in the fall in Esalen, which is gorgeous Northern Carolina area, Northern California, absolutely beautiful. If you look up Esalen, Esalen, and it's just a fantastic program on opening your heart and reclaiming your life, which brings in both my books, The Love Response and Your Brain on Nature.
Thank you so much for sharing with our listeners how they can have more with you. Let's talk animals now. I feel so peaceful sitting in my yard, watching the deer, and excited when a fox trots by, and calmed by my purring cat. What are some of the recent findings on the benefits of pets and animals in our lives?
Well, interestingly, I talk about pets in both my books because, pets, again, remember, we are nature. We evolved in nature. We lived in symbiosis with nature and animals. And so there's a reason that, we feel comfortable with animals. Our brain actually sees animals as warm and loving as opposed to a car. A car is a threat. But again, we don't understand that that's happening physiologically. So there's a lot of reward stimulation in our brain just by being with pets that, again, is like a drop of morphine in your body. And that other piece of it is love. Pets bring us unconditional love, and love is what really triggers those dopaminergic reward systems and drops that morphine into your body, turning off that stress response. So that connection, that love, which is really at the core of nature, is at the core of, pets. And there's a lot of studies looking at pet therapy where they bring in pets into elderly or in the hospital or trying to get better and or with our veterans. And we see that people overcome traumas and illnesses when a pet is introduced into the scene.
You just said something that I really want to come back to, and you said love is at the core of nature. And I think that is so true, and we can really live into that and lean into that as we enjoy walking or looking at nature or doing our guided imagery or whatever, recognizing that really the love is the source of it all, and that's what we get to experience in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, and that's really what my work is. It's really about love and teaching people how to connect with love. And, and that's why Alan, like I said, approached me, because one of those modalities for me and my clients was using nature. And he said, I am so interested in this subject and you're doing it clinically. Let's match our knowledge. So really at the core of nature is love.
Yes. Yes. Hear that, listeners? That's so key. Feel that. Don't just hear that with your ears, but actually take that in with your whole body. There are certain statements that we can really feel within our bodies, and that's one of them. So, what about gardening? I know sometimes there are gardening programs for people who live in assisted living and for seniors and for children in inner cities. What do we know about the effect that has on our general wellness?
Again, very, very positive. I mean, not only is, we have love here, right? There's the love of the earth and what it's providing, but it's the love of myself for what I'm doing for the earth and what I'm doing for myself and watching something grow. So the love that we, experience by gardening is beneficial in so many different ways. It's helped children with anxiety, with, attention deficit disorders, with connecting with their larger environment. It helps the elderly because it's also not only the mental health and emotional benefits, but also the physical benefits of being active. So people who garden tend to be healthier also because they're more physically active. So, there's a myriad of benefits that comes from gardening, not to mention you're spending at least 20 minutes outdoors getting that sun.
As you were talking, something came to mind, and you've probably given this some thought too, but I want to share it with our listeners just in case they haven't, and that is something about the interconnectedness, the interrelationship. It's not just we're getting something from nature, but nature gets something from us too. Mm-hmm. When we care for it, when we love it, when we appreciate it, when we come out and ooh and ah at cherry blossoms or dig in the soil, there's really a beautiful two-way connection going on, and I want to speak to that.
Absolutely. And again, this is what, in that conversation we had about, not being connected to nature, not being connected to our environment. The more we're oohing and ahhing when it comes to our environment, the more likely we're going to help it stay that way and care when it's getting destroyed. So,
yes.
So that's really important. It's like I said, it's a symbiotic relationship. I help you, you help me. The more I help you, the more you help me. The more you help me, the more I can help you. It goes round and round. The better I feel, the more I'm likely to serve. And so the better nature feels, the more it's likely to serve us. The better we feel, the more likely we're to serve nature.
Yeah.
That's the love response.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to believe this, but we're already at the end of our program, Eva. I'd like you to stay on the line for a minute if you can. I so appreciate that you were here. I'm grateful that you took time out of your busy schedule to be with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, that's wonderful. I've enjoyed you being here. A final quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson I just love, and that is, "Earth laughs in flowers." The beauty of nature, the mysteries of nature, the healing essences of nature have been important in my life as long as I can remember, and I know they're important in yours too. And I'm so grateful with Dr. Eva today that she could join us and share her knowledge about the research behind what we intuitively know and feel in nature and share the practices that she knows that can really support our healing. Join us next week on Voices for Healing. Our guest is Kathleen Paisley. She will share her experiences with episodic major depression and the tools she uses to keep her on an even keel and to heal. Until next week, remember to transform loss, embrace vitality. You've been listening to Voices for Healing with Cathy Roberts.
Thank you for listening to Voices for Healing. Please join Cathy Roberts again next Monday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Health and Wellness Channel. We wish you the best recovery from your loss, and we'll talk again next week.
Thanks again for listening to the preceding program, brought to you on the Voice America Health and Wellness Channel. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericahealth.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the preceding program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.